Hi, I'm Jill Burrows. I just spent a month and a half living out in the Everglades, and I learned a lot of interesting things while I was out there. So first of all, I learned about the Everglades themselves, which I've never actually been to before, and I still haven't fully experienced. So there's the dry season, which I've got to experience part of, and then there's the wet season, which I only got to experience a taste of. During the wet season, every afternoon there's rain, and it just pours down. There's also something interesting that's going on to the Everglades right now. The Everglades are shrinking, right? There's a dwindling amount of the actual Everglades there, and part of that is due to Tamiami Trail. The highway itself forms a dam that goes all along the state of Florida and divides the north part of the Everglades from the south part of the Everglades and stops the natural flow of water across. So if you're ever driving across the state of Florida and you're taking Tamiami Trail, make sure that you look to the north and to the south and do it several times while you're traveling along this trail, because you'll notice very different things. I mean, in the north, it's just completely covered in water. I mean, it's flooded most of the time, especially according to the indigenous people who live there. There are also, if you look to the south, I mean, you can walk nearly everywhere in there. It's dry, and it doesn't get wet until the wet season comes. And it rains every day, and it eventually fills up. Because Tamiami Trail, there's a few culverts, and they're spaced far apart, and they just don't let much water go through. And that's a problem for certain business owners, especially the people that have their tours that they give, their airboat rides. Because what that means is that when it's not the wet season, there's very few regions that they can actually run their airboats on. And that's really unfortunate for them because that depresses their local economy. And while I was out there, I ended up learning a few other things. One of those things that I learned about was the River of Grass Greenway project, which is basically an effort across multiple counties to connect a bicycle path that goes from one end of Florida all the way to the other end. Now, this is a multi-million-dollar project, and it's only going to benefit a few people. I mean, people already are out there on that highway biking across. So the people that are determined to do it are going to do it. You're not going to stop them. And you're probably not going to encourage very many other people to bike out to the middle of the Everglades either. I mean, the entire way along the path, you'll probably end up running into pythons, which are actually an invasive species. There's alligators all along the path. I mean, if you don't bug them, they'll probably leave you alone. There's also bears, which we've had a couple of run-ins with. There are other things out there too. I mean, there's spiders that can bite you and give you a miserable time if you don't suck the venom out immediately. There are lots of things out there that you need to deal with, and if you're not used to dealing with them, you might do something wrong. The other thing about this bike trail is that it goes along Tamiami Trail, which is already a dam, as I mentioned earlier, and it's not clear from any of these designs as to how the water flow is going to happen. It's possible that it's going to allow just the same amount of water flow as Tamiami Trail does right now, but even that isn't sufficient. And it's possible that it will even reduce the water flow, which is going to be bad for the businesses that are already out there, that this trail might even be intended to help. Just because the trail is there and more people are there doesn't mean that there's going to be the water for these people giving airboat rides to actually continue their business. Another thing that's going on is the Aqua by the Bay development. So what they're doing there is there's this pristine section of the shore. So this isn't exactly Everglades, but it's still an environmental impact that I want to talk about. So there's this pristine shoreline. It's about 2.5 miles long. And they want to put in a section of development all along that. So they're going to have a retaining wall going all along this 2.5 mile section that allows mangroves to be there and an estuary to happen. But the estuary, they have to do some mitigation work in order to provide some environmental improvements that offset the land that they're going to use for the development. So this is going to require dredging, and it's going to require dredging through an area that has basically native remnants. So there's some sacred sites there. And I don't know about you, but you probably don't want somebody digging through your relative's graveyard. So it would be really impolite for this to happen. Additionally, the main justification for the project is really that the field that they're going to use for this development project, it's mild wetlands. It's overrun with Brazilian pepper tree. And so their main justification for this project in its entirety is that the land is already overrun with Brazilian pepper tree. Let's use it for development because it's ruined. Well, the thing is that you can remove Brazilian pepper tree. There's nothing stopping them from doing that, other than it requires money, and you have to pay people to do that work, and it doesn't give anyone more money down the road and line their pockets with the property being developed. There's another project going on that's using a similar justification. There's the rock Pinelands. Basically, there used to be I think it was 168,000 acres of this, and now there's only around 10 acres or something like that of this land, where there were a whole bunch of pine trees that were used in the early construction in Florida, and this pine wood is so hard that you have to drill into it first before you even put your screw in there, and you can't even nail into it. It's just so hard. But in these areas, there are plants that are on the endangered species list. And what Miami-Dade County wants to do is put in a Walmart. And their justification for this is that there's this Burma reed plant that is a foreign invasive species brought by the United States government from some island during World War II, I believe. And what they want to do is just say that because the ecosystem has been destroyed by this plant, we should put a Walmart here because there's nothing better that can be done about it. There's some people that have gone out there and they've said, no, there are definitely things that we can do about this. We can restore this land. Unfortunately, it costs like $11,000 for a certain, region of the land, which I forget exactly how big of a region that is. But it costs that much in order to restore it. So it can be done. It's just that people want to say that restoring this land isn't worth it, and we should do economic development instead. And this is a common justification. I mean, Aqua by the Bay, this project, and I'm unaware of all the other projects that can be going on that have the same justification. There's also some oil exploration which is happening in Collier County in the Big Cypress Preserve. All of this exploration is because the Colliers originally gave this land to the National Park Service, but they retained their mineral rights to use this. And in 1988, Congress ended up saying that private oil exploration, oil and gas exploration can be done on this property. So there's no, there's nothing that they're doing right now that is technically illegal. So they have every right to be there. They have every right to trample over parts of the Big Cypress Preserve in the Everglades and destroy parts of it just because Congress gave them the go-ahead to do this in 1988. So if you really want to stop this and help preserve it, we're going to have to pass through, this basically something in Congress which becomes law, which says they can no longer do any oil and gas exploration in this area. There might be things that we can do locally, pass something in Collier County or at the state level to make matters more complicated for them so that, things get illegally murky so that they have to do more work. And that might be a good delay tactic until we can elect new representatives in 2018. But basically what they're doing is they have this region which is called the Sunnyland Trend. It's this oil field that's way down, it's really, really deep in the earth. And it stretches actually from the west coast all the way to the east coast. And it's not actually that great of a producer. At one point, it produced a lot of, barrels of oil. I think it was around 18,000 barrels of oil a day. And now it's just down to 2,800 barrels of oil per day as of 2013. So what they're really doing is they're just trying to move further towards Miami through the Big Cypress Preserve to try and find more oil because their business is slowly dwindling year after year. And they just want to keep up with the status quo instead of calling it quits and moving on to something else. There are several other projects that I'm aware of. There's actually either a coal or natural gas power plant, which is going to be put in around Lake Okeechobee. I need to get more details around this because I'm unclear of some of the details. But that's just my fault because I actually have a stack of papers that talk about this. And then also in the Miami region, there's the Turkey Point power plant. It's a nuclear power plant. And back in 2016, there was actually a leak in the coolant system, and it was found that traces of radioactive material were released into the Biscayne Bay, which is unfortunate, and now they've said that they've fixed it. But they also want to do another project to expand the power plant, which has the possibility of actually maybe even contaminating the Floridian aquifer, which is a large aquifer that goes all the way through Florida and up into Georgia. So that's what I have right now, and I'm sure that there are plenty of other things going on, and I'll try and update you as soon as I know. But it's important that we get out there and we fight for what we need to do to preserve our land, preserve the Everglades, preserve nature, preserve Mother Earth, because Mother Earth doesn't need us, but we sure need her to be in the state that she is right now. Because if we don't save the state that she's in right now, she's going to continue to live on, but us, we won't.